Okay, back on the Model T, finally. Hope everyone had a Merry Christmas. Just got a couple days off here between Christmas and New Year's. But my next step is going to be setting up these hairpin rods for the front suspension. Now, these mounts were previously very poorly welded to the Model A frame, so I'm going to have to clean these up. See where I cut them off originally. Well, they had self-tapping screws drilled into the frame, and then these booger welds top and bottom. So they're designed to be bolted on. Don't know if I'm going to bolt it on or not. You can see the frame's already boxed, so if I bolt them on, then I gotta cut out access in behind or weld a slug in through for the bolts to go through. I don't know. I'm probably just gonna weld them to the outside of the frame and be done with it. We'll see. I'm gonna clamp them on first and figure it out. See, the one that I have up here already is the holes where they were previously drilled, but that will not line up any longer. That's going to come up, but it's further ahead because I've changed the way the front axle's mounted. Got that suicide mount on, and it's out further ahead by that much. So it's kind of in between. Should probably just clamp it and weld them on. It's actually mounting points for the old stock steering box, I think. I don't know, this was steering box. Fender brace, yes, up inside the fenders and the running board on a Model A. So, I'm not with this frame and that. I'm gonna leave the holes. Someone asked me, they said, are you gonna weld all the holes up and everything? Then it looks like someone just made a tube frame in their garage. I'm gonna leave the holes so it's obvious that it's an old frame. I don't know. Just adds to the jalopiness of it. If that's even a thing, jalopiness. So I guess the first step is clean up the frame tab mount thing, but also another reason for not using where they were on the Model A frame is previous owner that kind of boogered all this together. These mounts were wound right in. These are Speedway kit part. They're cheap. They're reasonable. They're well built. There's nothing wrong with them. Their instructions, I actually looked them up. You can look up their instructions for all their stuff online. You even have dimensions in that. So if you really want to get ambitious, you can build your own. But really, the cost is in the heim joints and the clevises anyway, so you might as well just order them. Their instruction says to leave 4 or 5 threads exposed, right, to give you adjustment. And these were bottomed right out when it was originally set up. So I don't know the reason for that. This one I've already done. This one not. So I'm just gonna do that quick. So that's where it should be. The one that's on the chassis, it needs to be done. It hasn't. I'm gonna take that off and sort it out. Then I'm gonna clean this up. That booger crap off of it. It just, man, boggles the mind. There's like 0 penetration on that weld. Like, get all the paint cleaned off of that. Mount that up. Oh yeah, and these are on upside down too. Because that spot should be out. So if you have this flat side up against this heim joint, that mounts through there like that. If you have the flat side to the heim joint, the heim joints can actually bind on that flat surface. It's another reason they use these tapered washers too. Give some clearance to the heim joint. So when it does flex, there's room. See? Boom. Otherwise, if it's just there, it's gonna, there's something flat there, it'll bind. These, they come with these washers. Bam, see, it won't bind. Because these front ends move around a lot. And they're supposed to move around. Well, freak out, everyone thinks everything should be rigid and inline. No. You do that to these cars. 20s Fords, 30s Fords, or 20s, 30s, anything. And you lock them up so that stuff doesn't move and wiggle around and that, the car will shake itself to pieces. There's supposed to be a certain degree of flex and twist and wiggle to them. Believe it or not, they were designed that way, but that's, so yeah. So this mounts so that that part is out to the outside of the car towards the heim joint. Not this way with the heim joint up against that flat, which is how they were sketched in there. So yeah, so that's the next step. Do that. Throw it in the vise and clean it up. Okay, 9/16 round. These don't need the extension. Might. What I found with the other one is these nuts are all cross-threaded. So I gotta get some more bolts for these. Or it goes back on. It's another thing I gotta figure out. Shock mount. Nuts. Yeah, so shock mounts next. Well, I don't know about next, but the consideration. Whether it's just flip around to the back of his axle. of little bits and bobs to do. Lots of little stuff. Tons and tons of little stuff. And that simply comes off the bat wing just like that. Now, I just said bat wing. That is this piece here. It's welded to the axle. Shoot. See if I can get in there. That piece right there that's welded to the axle. That's what the hairpin attaches to. Referred to as the bat wing. Now you look at this one. Yeah, you can see it there. Right here, this piece here. The two holes. Get that mount for the spring as well. I think I might just maybe come off of there with the shocks. I don't know. Make a tab. Weld the tab to the bat wing. And just put a tab on the axle here for the back. The shock up in here. Lots of room through here, and I can come up with something. I'm sure I can just buy a front end and it'll work for this. This was originally front end for a Model A, and I've made a suicide mount. But, like I said, try to use the parts that I have and spend as little money as possible. So, which pretty much have everything. Now the steering box. Pedals, a couple choices there. I want to get this front end mounted, and then I can throw the engine and transmission in, and then I can start playing with the pedal setup. So I'm gonna have to have room for pedals, brake master, the shifter. That mounts to the side of the trans. It's gonna get tight in there very quickly. They're not big cars, and I made it even smaller. So having room for the pedals and everything. Be so much easier if I just, copped out and grabbed an old Power Glide or even a TH350 and just popped it on the back of that motor and then stuck her in. You can see why guys did it. Guys didn't do it in the late 50s. Well, some did. They didn't really catch on to it because a lot of them were using the Ford drivetrain, so transmission and the torque tube and shortening up the torque tube there's a lot more people doing that type of thing then, which is kind of what you did, because it's the parts you got with it. It was the parts that were, get a driveline for $5 at the wrecking yard. If you were talking automatic transmission and everything else back then, if you didn't pull it out of a wrecked car, late 50s, I'm sure you'd find a wrecked 55 Chev, but even then, people weren't springing for autos, not in a Chevy. A lot of those cars were inline 6 cars. And then if you found one with the 265 or 283 in it, most of the time, 3/4 of them were going to be with a manual trans. And then guys were just grabbing the engines. They didn't want to deal with the Chevy transmission because people didn't make anything to put it in a hot rod. There wasn't shifters for them. There was like a floor shift. But then you had the extra expense of a 4 shift. Why do that when a 39 trans is already floor shift, and you've already got, you know, your buddy Skip shortened one for his car, so now he's gonna shorten yours for yours. Like, they knew it. They get the whole, you know, Ford chassis with all the springs, everything for $5 out of the wrecking yard, or from behind the neighbor's house for free. Just get that piece of junk out of here. That's what they did. That's what we did. That's why I like small block Chevys, because that's what I grew up around. Small block Chevys. They were in everything. Trucks had them, cars had them. Just about every damn car had one. Around me, I grew up near the GM plant. Everyone drove GMs. And the best, the cheapest stuff to use was Chevys. It was everywhere. I traded a cheeseburger, like a quarter pounder meal, for a running small block. It was in a running car. I went to the wreckers, needed a small one. I had $50. The guy asked me, he goes, how much? I asked him how much, and he said, well, how much do you want to pay? And I'm like, well, as little as possible. He goes, well, I need lunch. I said, sure, what do you need? What do you want for lunch? He goes, well, there's a McDonald's down the road. So I went down and got him a quarter pounder with cheese, and by the time I got back, they had it yanked. It was sitting in a running car. Sitting in a running Caprice that was an old taxi cab. I just needed it for a beater because the shit box I was using as a winter beater, it was knocking like friggin' nobody's business. So got that out of the cab, and it turned out it was had a rebuilder's tag on it. Oh, it didn't even leak oil, never burned a drop, nothing. I got it for a cheeseburger. So that's why I'm, you know, kind of steered towards the small block Chevy. Plus, there's so many parts, aftermarket stuff, just an old vintage speed parts, because they've been using them since the mid and late 50s in hot rods. So, and that's the era I'm going for with this car, is to be a late 50s T-bucket. Nothing too fancy, not a show car. Just a cool little old hot rod. Okay. This is the one I already got done. Let's set it over out of the way. Throw these bolts back in. I set them down, they'll be lost. Wow, that was messed up too. Throw these little taper washer bushing dealies back on this bolt. Leave this stuff all on the table. This one here. Let's mount it off because we'll clean this up the same as we did the other. That's what I was talking about. So they have it mounted like this. Wrong. See, it's gonna bind on that. I don't know if you can see that. I don't have the screen on the phone facing it. So. This side out. there. What size is that? So 1 inch. 13/16. Oh. Aha. That one's a 1 inch. Clean this out. So you've got a lot of thread on these for adjustment. Also want to at least put anti-seize on these, which you're supposed to do. That's another thing. It says in the instructions. So we that. So we got 2, 3, 4. Let's go 5 threads. And I'm not even going to tighten that up. Those are loose. Which again, I'll do the same thing. 4 or 5 threads exposed. And exposed means on this side of this jam nut. Again, I'm not going to wheel these all the way out, but there's the same thing. There's, you know, almost 2 inches of threaded. Four, turn. 5. Just like that. There. I don't want to have any tight. Line it up. And then next, I'm going to clean this up just like a clean towel. A little warm in here, right from the furnace. Okay, assembly time with this hairpin. The other one for the passenger side, I'm not going to put together right now because I've got stripped bolts on this on the road. So this there's no up, down, in or out on these hairpins. Different manufacturers could be different. These are universal side to side, doesn't matter. What does matter is that this faces the hind joint. Like that. And you use these. I also wondered why the flat washer, it's there as a spacer. The taper goes towards, like the narrow part of the taper goes towards the hind joint. So it allows it to pivot. Because these will walk around a fair bit. That goes on there. There's a thread on here. There. Nice, it doesn't rattle. Smooth. I'm not going to tighten that right up yet. One that's a nylock nut, I don't want to get into the nylock portion. Just tight enough to get that back on the car. That'll tell us where this is going to go. Okay, gonna mount this hairpin back up. So first, these clevises are gonna bolt to the batwing. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a C-clamp, clamp the bracket to the frame. And I'm gonna make up my mind whether I'm gonna bolt them on or weld them on. And then went for dinner, watch a bit of the tube, playing with the kid, all that type of stuff. Just thinking about this. I think what I'm gonna do, I think I'm gonna bolt them on. Thought of welding it on, but oh, a lot of old magazines and stuff. I was looking. The old magazines. That's good reference. You got late 50s, early 60s magazines and whatnot. You can see what they did. And with hairpins, it seems like most of the time, with hairpins, they were bolting them to the frame. That mount plate seemed to be the thing they did. And I think a lot of it has to do, I have to remember, even when I first started getting into cars in high school and stuff, not everyone had a welder. I mean, most guys at best had a set of torches. Maybe an old arc welder, but not a MIG even. Like, now guys have MIGs and TIGs and plasma cutters and you name it. Jeez. These bolts are terrible. Why did I have them stripped out? I'm actually gonna get some more hardware for these. So I don't think guys are doing a whole lot of welding for frames. I could be wrong, but that's going to come off of there. This is going to come off like this. And then I'll adjust it to get my camera, because that's rolling up forward, so I know I can feel the tension on it. I know I need to make some adjustments with these rods. With the clevises. Oops, wrong way. I got this on. Let me step back now to look. It's going to work, but actually needs to come down a little. I like to have these hairpins as parallel to the ground as possible. Such a wicked drop in his axle. Axle's got like a 5-inch drop, and then it's spring over, so yeah, it's not too bad. Yeah, so gonna grab some hardware. I'll throw the passenger side hairpin on, do much the same thing. Just gonna cut out the boxing plate on the opposite side. On the inside of the frame rail. So then I can bolt those to it. And I may just put tabs and countersunk screws and just bolt that section of boxing plate in so I can access them later if they loosen, or I may just weld the nuts on the other side. But I mean, if something breaks loose or it comes loose, then I'll be pulling them over to get at it. Whereas if I just had a bolt-in plate, like access cover, in behind those, I can just unbolt that and then get at the nuts on that side and tighten them or replace them as needed. And I could be just overthinking it. Just cut the section out, put it in, bolt them in, and then weld the section back up over. Maybe just tack the nuts in so the nuts don't back off inside the frame, and then that's it. It looks like the holes are like 3/8 holes, so get some 3/8 grade 8 bolts, crank them in there. The bolts are for clamping only, there's no shear. There's not supposed to be any shear on this. So put that a little lower, about 1/2 inch lower. Gonna get those 4 holes centered in the frame rail there. Mark it out, drill the holes, put the hardware in. I need hardware. Need hardware for the clevises. Got 2 of them that are stripped. Seem to be pretty crap quality bolts. So is that a quarter 20? I have 3/8. 3/8 grade 8. We'll get some of them. Maybe I'll look on the Speedway catalog for the hardware. Go online. I'm gonna go work for the next 5-6 days anyway. Or if they get the hardware kit for the clevises.